on YouTube. Like,
Yeah.
people didn't know we had a YouTube page. Once they found out, we had a lot of subscribers. And so I
Yeah.
just,
So it says we're live on YouTube now.
yeah. Oh, you on the YouTube page?
No,
Yeah,
I
we
just see it in the
live
top right hand corner. I just got a notification saying that it was
on
live.
YouTube. Yeah, let
Yep.
me turn the volume down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it live on YouTube now.
So, okay.
Somebody Valentine just posted.
Yeah, we're on YouTube.
Yep. She said good evening. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see.
You go in.
All I see is the name.
Okay.
Can't see a picture.
Yeah, Sister Yolanda Valentine. We got 15 people watching, but Facebook has blocked me. They said I used it in a way that it does not meet their community standards.
What?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Sister Lasagna Thomas, she can post and let people know that we've switched to YouTube. Please let members know. Yeah.
It's a delay on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few seconds.
I just heard that.
Yeah. If you're trying to watch it and be on Zoom, here's the delay.
Yeah.
So I just sent Lasagna Thomas a message to post that we've switched to YouTube, and I think that people will be coming over. Yeah. So now, of course, the messages always come through. Hey, are you guys on? Because I know we have some grandmasters and grandmasons who want to hear. She said, okay, she's going to do that. I can't get on Facebook. Okay. The great, Lamont, the great thing about having an iMac is connecting it with your iPhone, and you can send messages while you're on the computer. Like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just responding to all these text messages of folks saying, where y'all at? Hey, join us on YouTube. And the copy and paste feature is amazing. We've switched. Lamont, the great thing about having an iMac is connecting it with your iPhone, and you can send messages. Okay.
I'm turning it off.
You're turning it off? Okay. Switched, okay. I think we'll give folks, we switched to YouTube. Gotta send the man the link to let him know, hey, this is where we're at over here. Brother Meeks, let's see, Sister Walton. Yeah, because the good thing about them is they have the accessibility to Brother Ali and Sister Nichols. They can push it out to all the grandmasters and grand matrons at once. That is a good thing. So we're gonna give folks a few minutes to switch over here. Oh wow, a few people have come over. Hey, okay.
I see my boy brother Tremel on.
Sister Willette Martin, Sister Ladina Moling, Sister Tammy Guilford, Sister Bridget Washington, Sister Helen Graham, Sister Honey Scott, Sister Laquita Jackson, Sister Barbara Moultrie. Yes, we're on YouTube because we were having Facebook problems. And so we've asked a couple of folks to post on YouTube, on Facebook, that we are now on YouTube. And so good evening, Grandmaster Robert Stevens, Sister Adina Martin, Sister Erica Williams, Grand Matron for the state of New Jersey, Sister Shirley Mullins, Sister Trellis Johnson, Associate Grand Matron of Georgia, Terry, Grand Master for the state of Georgia, Sister Ethel Robertson Ellison, Luscious Jeffrey Chamel, Brother Cranston Hill, and Terrence 6473, which I think is illustrious Terrence Bennett out of Florida, if I remember that name correctly. And so please let everyone know in your Facebook world that we are on YouTube, and you can give them the YouTube link so we can get them over here as soon as possible. Illustrious John Dogan said he is in. I have not seen his comment yet, but he said he is in. And Illustrious Meeks is having a technical difficulty, but we're going to get him in also. So we apologize, everyone, for the technical situation. Something happened with Facebook today where they decided that I was breaking community guidelines and blocked me posting on our groups. And I guess that trickled over to also being able to go live, because we've seen us go live 3 times. And so but we're going to work it out. We adjust. We are international, so we have a way of adjusting. Illustrious DeWitt McGowan. I see the Midwest National District Grand Masters here. Sister Evangeline Worthy, former Grand Matron for the state of Delaware, and Brother Baron Oliver. Good evening to you all. And so in a few minutes, we'll get started. We'll give folks a couple of more minutes to get here. Sister Patricia Kennard from Mississippi. Good evening. And Sister Kay Booker. Good evening to you. Yes, we know. Someone just texted and says, no one can get on the site. I'm like, yes, we know. That's why we want them to come over here. Come over here. Come over here. Yes. And yeah. So how are you all doing tonight? Grandmaster, Grand Matron, Grand Joint Council, Executive Director, how are you all doing?
Excellent.
Outstanding.
It's good.
Excellent.
Great.
For your patience tonight. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but my name is not Mark Zucklenberg. He is the owner of the Facebook. And so I'm sure that he can resolve this more so than me.
Right.
So we will see what happens. But the good thing is we have another platform that we can go live on, and that is YouTube. Hey, Sister Martina Durham, Grand Matron for the state of South Carolina. Sister Chandria McCant, Southeast National District Grand Matron. Sister Takia Hall, I know she's in Georgia. Sister Cynthia Brown, the Supreme Recruit Deputy for the state of Florida. Good evening to you. And Sister Katrina Edwards is the Georgia Grand OES Executive Director. Good evening. And Brother Rolando Linares is checking in from Virginia. Good evening to you. And so in one more minute, we will get started and we will begin the discussion. So again, thank you everyone for your patience and for chiming in with us as we had to switch platforms. But we're still here. We're still together.
You here.
That's good. Okay. Give me 1 second, you all. I had to do a workaround with Facebook. YouTube. Tell you all the trick in just a second. What I had to do, Lamont, what do you think I had to do?
I have no idea. I'm not a Facebook guy, so not Facebook.
Okay.
So you gonna stream to your Facebook from YouTube?
Oh, no. What I did is, and it didn't work. I thought it was going to work. What I did is I added my other Facebook account as an administrator on the International Masons page, but it's not letting that account post either. And so
they're gonna lock you down all the way. Huh?
Facebook,
Yeah, you've been flagged.
Not good. I've been
Someone flagged you. Yeah.
It depends on how many times you've gone live today. So you may have used up your live time. I don't know.
I think it's the post because I post so much, right? And then when I respond to people, I guess they're counting all of that as activity on Facebook.
They want you to pay them.
But we live to see another day.
That's
So
right.
let's get rolling. So Brother illustrious Harold Brown from I think he is the New York. Is he the New York?
And he's the vice. He's the vice.
Yes,
for Supreme. Yep.
Okay, Sister Diane Hinton, good evening to you. Okay, so let's get ready to rumble. Okay, so please, you all, I think I've probably introduced you all enough, right? And your names are on the screen, or do y'all want to? How about formal opening remarks? Let's start with the Grandmaster. Your opening remarks for tonight.
Opening remarks are, first off, just thanks for everybody tuning in and checking us out. I'm looking forward to the conversation as always. Anything that we can do to uplift the spirits of international, we're all for it. So just looking forward to the conversation and shedding any light or answering any questions that anyone else might have about the things that we've already done, that we pioneered into international.
Yes, y'all are the pioneers.
Roll it out there.
Spark of international. The Wright brothers. Well, Wright brothers. Grand Matron.
Just want to say welcome everyone. I'm glad that you can join us, and same as the Grandmaster, we're just glad to be able to speak with you on how our grand session went here in Michigan, and we really had a good time. So just here to share our lessons learned.
Grand Joint Council Executive Director.
Good evening, international family. It's so good to connect with you all this evening. I bring you greetings from the Grand Joint Council of the great state of Michigan, and greetings for all the Grand Joint Council and district councils across international. Good evening.
Yes. So I see we have a few folks who've chimed in tonight who've also identified themselves as members of the Grand Joint Council. Sister Chandra Williams is Tennessee Grand Joint Council. We have several other folks who've joined. Sister Michelle Stanfield is in New York, and in Pincham, Sister Valerie Martin. But I guess we can get into the concept, like when you all first thought of so I guess we should tell folks who are viewing the prelude, right? So this past Friday, which was May the 22nd, the state of Michigan, which is Ralph Bunche Grand Lodge, Edison,
Edith
Sampson Grand Chapter. And now
Let me move out the way. You can read it right there.
Oh, that
Yes.
thank you. Edith Sampson Grand Chapter, yes, and Ralph Bunche Grand Lodge. Thank you. At first, I was like, "What did Lamont just go?" Then you said you could read it right.
Move out the way so you can see it.
Got you, because his head is just so knowledge.
Right.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, does the Grand Joint Council have a name? Have y'all named the Grand Joint Council?
No.
Okay. So Friday evening, we had the Grand Joint Council session for the state of Michigan, and we had it virtually via Zoom. So the folks on the screen are the ones who headed that up. Of course, our Supreme Grand Master and our Supreme Grand Matron were there to superintend. But I wanted to check in with you all to give a feel for those who are planning. We have quite a few states that are now looking at the Michigan project. I was on a call and I said, let's just call it the Michigan project, because it was the first one. And so it's something that we're all going to learn from, to do, not to do, could do differently, and all those sorts. And so let's talk about what lessons would you all say, the top 3 lessons you all learned from it going into it on Friday. Grandmaster.
Well, before I get to the lessons, I'd like to start off with, like when we first talked about doing it, the first thing that popped in my mind was, this is crazy. Like, why would we have a grand session on Zoom? It's not going to work. Like we thought about all of the reasons why. Well, I thought about all of the reasons why it wouldn't be successful. I'm thinking, I'm not about to sit on Zoom for 3 days and meetings all day to go through all of these reports and go through all of these meetings and everything like that. So, but I think after we really sat down and discussed all of the details, like anything else, like we adapt and overcome and figure out ways to make it happen. And I'll say the top lesson that I learned from it was, anything is possible when you have people on your team that's willing to put in the work and make sure everything is in harmony. So we had a great team that put it together, even including yourself. I consider you as part of the team helping put it together from a technology standpoint. So I think once we have that team working on it and ensuring that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, we can adapt and keep it moving. So yeah, that's my thought process on it.
Okay. Grand Matron, your
Same
thoughts?
way. In talking with the Grandmaster, we just came up with a game plan as to how we were going to do it. And we were also given some guidelines. I think in hindsight, one thing would do is make sure that all the department heads are accessible and was able to log in. So next time, I think just make sure that they're all available and know that they're on, and not having technical issues to be able to give their reports. That's the one thing I think, big lesson learned.
Okay. Grand Joint Council Executive Director. You lead.
The lead, yes, yes. So it was definitely a learning experience. I'm just used to just being more engaged with the audience. You know, we have a ritual that we do in Michigan every time we come together, and it was just really hard to not do that. I'm hands-on, so I like everybody to get in there and really show love, and it's joint. So I love the fact that we're able to commingle the brothers and the sisters. So it was a little bit different to not be able to do that. So we gave virtual hugs to one another, and we started out our devotion with music instead of having a panel or having a devotion team. So it was a little weird to do it that way, but it worked. It worked. We had our scripture, we did our devotion, we had our inspirational time, and it worked out. It worked out really well.
Now, how many versions of that PowerPoint did y'all go through?
You really want to know?
So just to give our viewers an idea of that, we switched back and forth between everyone on the screen, and then we had different parts of the agenda on PowerPoint. And so, yeah, I would love to know how many versions of that PowerPoint, and how did y'all pass it around to each other?
Actually, it was just 2 versions. We had one version that we did Sunday night, and then based on the president's message, we had to make some adjustments.
Okay.
So it was only 2 versions. So actually did pretty well with that one.
Now, how many versions was the first one? How many pages was the first one?
131.
And how many did you all narrow it down to?
25.
Okay. Oh, so you know the number exactly, Brother Brown.
Yeah, but the grand matron did all the work.
Okay.
So I'm just good with numbers. Yeah, she did all the heavy lifting.
Okay. Okay.
We just made sure we sent everything to her, and she consolidated, reconciled everything, and put it into a deck for us, so that put everything in order, created the table of contents and everything. We just had to make sure we got her all the inputs from across the entire state. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there was a lot of support from across the state. From every department had to provide their own reports and everything. So
lesson 1 is make sure you have someone who knows PowerPoint on your team as you're creating your version, your virtual version. Now, the devotion. Now, Sister Dixon, how did you follow along? Did you have the agenda already?
No, but I kind of just understood exactly, the format that we've always followed. And of course, I just fell in place with the Grandmaster and Grand Matron and called on them for the spaces that were empty, because, I wasn't 100%. But, with that beginning of that process, but it went through pretty smoothly.
Now, how did you all, so for those who didn't get a chance to go, there was a devotion slide.
Yes.
With gospel music playing in the background.
Yeah, that was our inspirational. That was our devotion.
And I thought that was amazing. Who did that?
Grand Matron.
Only because we tried in one of our district meetings to do a devotion live, and it just does not work with all the voices and the time delays.
Oh yeah.
I just thought it would have been better to play the music for devotion, and then we did the scripture and the prayer.
Okay. And then you all also had a memorial page.
Yes.
Now, who put that slide together? That was Grand Matron. Okay. You are the queen of PowerPoint.
Well, working from home gives you enough time to do a little bit of extra on the side and not have to worry about someone looking over your back. So, yeah.
Okay. So now also there was the reports. And so when you all turned it over to the Supreme Grand Master and the Supreme Grand Matron, is that they began to call on reports. Now, who compiled the PDF?
I did that part.
Okay.
so I did a little something, but I just copied them all from her report.
Okay.
so she compiled the 131 pages, and I just snagged 25 of them pages and put them into the report book that we're actually going to go through live. So that way we didn't have to flip through empty pages that we didn't need as we're going through. Only the relevant pages were going to be viewed.
Okay. So we had 2 presentations, right? When we shared the screen, the PowerPoint and the PDF.
Right.
Okay. So as we progress along, what would you all have done differently when you think about the whole thing? Is there anything you all would have done different?
Yeah, from my perspective, and I think what people probably should know is we didn't have a lot of time to plan and prep for this. I mean, like we pretty much planned it all out in, I'll say, roughly a week's time. So, I mean, like going through, even like Sister Dixon said, I mean, like we really didn't sit down and go through the agenda because we've all done it numerous times in the past. And between the Grand Matron and I, we came up with the game plan of who's going to do what, who's going to lead what, who's going to do the scripture, who's going to do the prayer, and just made sure everything continued to flow. Because the one thing that's always a challenge for me is when you're on Zoom calls or on calls online, is the dead space. So we definitely didn't want any dead space. And the thing that I'll say that worked out, actually, in my opinion, worked out really good was the logistical aspect of it, from ensuring that only certain people had the ability to open up the line. So how we created um, the different logins for people. So some people could just log in as a viewer, but you didn't have to worry about their mics being hot.
Okay.
So I think just being able to control the entire meeting was very successful. When you talk about doing things different, though, I mean, like I definitely, anybody that knows me knows I like to have every I dotted, every T crossed. So if we could have had a little bit more time to truly plan it out, the every minute detail that we would typically do, I think we could have not winged it as much. I mean, like even though I feel like we kind of winged it a little bit, I think our team works so well together that it made it look like it was all planned out.
Right.
And the reality of it is, we just have a really good team and we all really mesh well, we gel well, and everybody works together and everybody has each other back. So I think ultimately, our National Midwest District Grandmaster gave us the opportunity to bring it forth. And even though it was successful, I thought it was, or like I said, it was much more successful than I thought it was going to be initially. At first, I thought it was going to be a hot mess, and it actually was very good. I mean,
Okay.
like it turned out to be extremely great, actually, from my perspective. I'm not sure how it could have been any better from my perspective. Um, but I think going into it, you just need the proper planning. You need the proper direction from leadership. Exactly what are they expecting to see? Because I mean, like essentially, between the Grand Matron, myself, and even Sister Dixon, I mean, like we designed everything and planned everything. So when we talk about the books and everything, just based off of our knowledge of what we would typically do at a grand session, we wanted to make sure everything was included so that the leaders would have it at their fingertips to review the books ahead of time. So I think we passed the books out, sent the books out. I believe it was that Monday prior to the Sunday or that Monday prior to the grand session to give everybody time to review the books ahead of time so that once we got on the call, it's not the first time that they're actually seeing the reports and everything. So um, I think that actually helped us out tremendously because everybody was able to formulate all of their questions or concerns or whatever they had on any of the reports prior to the meeting even started. Because at the end of the day, you want to make it as efficient as possible. You want to keep it moving. You don't want to waste time. So
Okay.
um,
Okay.
don't get me to talk, and I turn into my National Midwest District Grand Master and won't shut up. So
And you know,
keep going. I know he watching. That's why I said it.
Well,
man, make,
one thing I would probably adjust differently, but like Grandmaster said, we were doing it on a week's time, and I know we had all the department heads. I would have probably preferred to separate the joint executive board reports from the joint council, and that way I think we could have did more with the joint council and then had the joint executive had a 30-minute, no more than 30-minute joint executive board meeting and go through those reports and any questions that they had regarding the departments or any questions that was had would be in the joint executive board meeting with the leaders of the state, and then go to the joint session meeting and held it like a joint session would be, minus some things that we would normally do in person. but just held a regular joint session meeting minus the department head reports.
Okay. Okay. Grand Joint Council Executive Director.
Yeah, I agree. I think with that kind of listening and we had a little bit of dead air when it came to, trying to get those who couldn't get on to read their report. And I think just trying to look for those individuals, or maybe, they were trying to get on, they couldn't get on, or maybe wasn't aware that they needed to be on, because we did things differently. When we were in person, we did this type of reading their annual synopsis at our joint executive board meeting, and not in the joint session, as the Grand Matron said. So I think that would have been able to cut down on some of the time and do a separate 30-minute, and then just do Grand Matron, Grand Master, Joint Council Director, finance reports, just keeping it simple, and making sure that it's clean and cut across the board as from a joint standpoint, and then go into the different departments, or a different session if we have to, if it warrant that. So
now, can you talk about Grandmaster, this background that's behind you and the Grand Matron? So
let me just make sure you can see it.
Yes, we can see it. We know what the Masonic emblem, the OES, and the youth, and what are the other two?
Oh.
That's the great state of Michigan.
That's the great state of Michigan. Okay.
And the Great Lakes.
And the
It's
Great
the
Lakes.
upper and lower peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
That's right.
Now,
I had some technical difficulties. I couldn't get mine up.
That's okay. Who's the designer of that?
That's
That would
the
be
Grandmaster.
That would be the Grandmaster. Okay. So Grandmaster,
That's
you
right.
designed. Okay. And Grand Matron, you designed. So there was some multiple designing going on. Okay. Let's talk about time, the timeliness of it. Do you all feel like you all had enough time as far as to take care of everything, or would you have given yourselves more time? I know you said without the department reports, if you would have took them out, how long do you think it should take?
An hour or
I think
less.
the hour would have worked just well. I think
Okay.
we would have got it through within that hour with some
Okay.
time to spare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think we got to be realistic about when we said time limits, though. I think if we would have kept everything in with the joint council reports, the department head reports and everything, I think realistically we should have been able to done everything within 2 hours. And we have to be realistic about starting and ending times, right? I mean, like, I think initially we said we was going to wait 5 minutes after we were going to start at 6:05. I think we started more like 6:10 or so. And just ensuring that all the logistics are in place, that everybody that's supposed to be able to speak can speak at the proper time, and everybody's lined up. I think one of the things that probably would have benefited would have been if we would have had an opportunity to ensure that everyone that was supposed to speak, mics were hot just when it was time for them to speak. So, and that they were actually on. So if we could have got confirmation that they were on, because you know me, if they're not on, I'm ready to keep it moving. All right, we on to the next one. The report's in the book, so I mean, like, so we've read the reports, we know it's there. They're just not there to get our synopsis. So because that was the whole concept with the reports, with the exception of my report, the Grand Matron report, and the Grand Joint Council Director's report, all the other reports were supposed to be synopsises of their annual report. So we shouldn't have had to read everybody's report and everything like that. So I think from a time-wise standpoint, again, and this is just me, I think you set it for 2 hours. If you get done earlier, then you get done earlier. You don't drag it out just to fill up a time slot, but you give yourself enough time, because I mean, like, we're cramming an entire weekend into one meeting. And the thing that we didn't really do much of was just a bunch of side talk, which a lot of the times that's unnecessary anyway. I mean, like, we waste a lot of time moving around. When we're doing honor science, we got to get up and walk around the entire room and come up. So we was able to eliminate all of that time. However, we didn't really give our leaders a lot of time to talk, which
When you say
I'm
leader,
not I mean, just general
Yeah.
communication. So the supreme leaders, I mean, like, they spoke, but I mean, like, you know how at an actual grand session, they have more time to talk. So I mean, like, I'm not advocating for giving them more time to talk, but at the same time, I mean, like, out of respect though, you want to make sure you can build that time in. So I think what would have been, now that I think about it, I think if we would have really built out a detailed time agenda and tried to stick to that. I think Sister Carla Nichols asked that question, how do we stick to the time? Is we actually build out the agenda with times on it so that we can actually know exactly where we are as we're going through it. Because again, I hate to say we were winging it, because I think another question was, did we practice beforehand? And
If
the
you let
answer was no.
if you
I'm
let me
sorry. Go ahead. I'm
host, yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Let
I'm
me
sorry.
host
Go
again.
for it, sir.
So
He
the
got some
Supreme Grand
questions.
Master says, good evening, Masonic family, Grand Master, Grand Matron, and Grand Joint Council Executive Director. I think y'all did an excellent job. So that is the comments from the Supreme Grand Master. The question, I think Hope Shelly Ann says, need help with the background. She loves it. So I imagine wherever she's from, they're probably going to do that. And someone asked, did you all practice beforehand to see how it would work? I think that's where you were going, Grand Master.
Yeah, I think that's would have been definitely an opportunity to have all the department heads maybe log in a few minutes early just to see the panel. So that way we can take attendance, and kind of like if we were on a dais.
Okay.
So I think that would be a great opportunity. It would help me because, of course, Grand Joint Council, I'm introducing the panel. So
Right.
just knowing who's attending, who's present, who's not available, from top to bottom, being able to see that panel ahead of time and being able to write my notes and get ready, because that's usually what I would do in person.
Okay.
So I think getting on maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, taking attendance of all the department heads and making sure that they're ready to rock.
Okay.
And then giving the members, if I may, second fold over, is just maybe ahead of time, making sure that the members have their questions written down and they could drop it in the chat. And then of course, whoever our host is can feed those back to us in case there's some any grievances or questions while we're in the meeting, because sometimes we do get questions, or having a question and answer toward the end if we have time to spare. So that would just be my input.
Okay, that's good. Grand Matron?
I also think not even having a trial run actually on Zoom, I think having a 20-30 minute meeting the day or two before to find out who's going to be there, who's available, who's not available. So that way we know who will be on and give them our expectations and let them know what is planned for the day or that evening. So I think just giving them a day or two to let them know so they're prepared and ready and have all their equipment tested out to make sure that they can connect and do all of that. So I think just being prepared a day or two ahead of time with all the panelists to make sure that they know what their expectations are and what our expectations of them are would help. So we're not going around saying who's on, and let them know that they're going to see this link, and to make sure that they're not on the general link and they're on their panelist link, and make sure that we have everything that they need. So we're not looking for them.
Okay. Now, there's another question from Sister Carolyn Nichols. Says, what is your suggestion about managing the time to make sure we don't go over the expected end time?
My thing with timing, sometimes it's hard to stick to a time. If you say you have a subject of, introductions is okay, but if you're saying we're going to have a brief synopsis, no more than 2 minutes, we know we do have some of those members that 2 minutes to them might mean 4. So you have to make sure, you just can't cut someone off, say we only have 10 minutes for this.
Well, Grand Matron, that's why you said 2 days ahead of time. That's why.
Right. So we have to adjust the timing. I know we always like to stick to a timing. We can have, okay, we're going to spend at least 20 minutes, but sometimes we know we're going to give ourselves, you have to add that padding in there. We just can't say 10 minutes straight. You add the padding and say, this is not means you take up the whole 20 minutes to do this. So we have to be careful when we're talking about sticking to a time limit on the agenda.
Okay.
But we do want to set that time so we don't go over, but you just can't say, okay, time is up. Sorry, we missed you. Come back to it later. So we want to
Okay.
be careful when we do that.
Oh,
But from my perspective, Brother Evans, though, I think we do need to first start off with what we think is a realistic time frame. I think it's unrealistic. I think it was really, in my personal opinion, after the fact, I think it might have been unrealistic to think that we'll get done with everything in less than an hour. And that's just my personal opinion. I think, like I said, if we set 2 hours and we're done in an hour and a half, then great, we just saved 30 minutes off the back end. And I think we have to be willing to end once we're done at 90 minutes versus just stretching out those last 30 minutes. I know sometimes we have a tendency to say that, well, we've still got another 30 minutes, so let's just figure out a way to fill it. Let's just ride it out, right? And I think if the business and everything is done, then you end the meeting at that point in time and give people back that time. So, but I think you start off with a quote unquote realistic expectation of time and you try to stick to it. So if you can go into the details of saying at 6:05 you're starting, at 6:10 you're completing devotion, at 6:15 you're moving into this, at 6:20 you're moving into this, and of course you won't be exact on, but it'll help you know when you need to make up some time, or if you start getting behind, how to adapt and overcome it. So I think that's one way of managing it, to try to stay the course. So yeah.
so now the separate session, how did y'all deal with that?
Separate session, actually, there was some people that was already on separate session, and I just was texting them, letting them know that we're running behind and we'll be joining soon. Because remember, we had some that said they were trying to get on, but we realized they were joining the separate session. So I was communicating with someone that was on the separate session to let them know that we were running behind. And then when we finished, I said, give us an additional 5 minutes for a break, and then we picked it back up. So.
Okay. Um, someone said a coordination committee. I know the Grand Master of North Carolina said that they met last week to prepare for their meeting this weekend coming up. Let's talk about recommendation for or suggestions you would give to Grand Masters, Grand Matrons, and Grand Joint Council executive directors in planning their virtual joint session as well as separate sessions. As far as would you do them together? Because I've talked with one state and they're doing morning and then some afternoon stuff.
Yeah. So I would say for me personally, I think the first thing you want to do is get together with your team and understand what the expectations are from the leadership. And when I say the leadership, from the Supreme, I think that was one thing that we didn't really have the opportunity to do. So we, like I said, we worked through our national leaders, through our National Midwest District Grandmaster, and he gave us a format of what he expected. And just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because I think if everybody's on the same page, it makes life a whole lot easier in the long run on the back end. If you know exactly what they're expecting, you know exactly what they want to see. I think we had some opportunities on our call where our Supreme Grand Matron and Supreme Grand Master may have wanted something that we didn't have in our 25-page deck, right? And the reason it wasn't in a 25-page deck was because when we were communicated to, we were told a specific regimen of reports that they wanted to see. And if they didn't tell us that, then we didn't put it in there. So just making sure that everybody's on the same page with expectations. Because like I say, from our perspective, we pretty much drove it. So we provided all the information and reported it out to them based off of what our expectations was, based off the information that we received. So I think just ensuring that everybody's on the same page, and that way you can plan it more efficiently and you're checking every box. The last thing you want to do is get on the call and not have the information that someone may be looking for. And to be completely transparent, me personally, I was more of the mindset that some information is still somewhat private and this is a public setting.
Okay.
Whereas, I mean, like it's online, and we were on Zoom at the time. So I still felt like some of the information should have been in a private setting, even though when we do meet at our grand session, I mean, like anybody can walk in there,
Right.
anybody can sit in there and listen to the information. You don't technically have to be a member to listen to it. But with us being online and me knowing a little thing about technology, I mean, I still feel like some things are better left offline.
Okay.
And that's just me personally.
Okay. Grand Matron. As far as when you think about the other grand matrons who are planning their sessions for the rest of this year and putting some stuff together, what tips would you want to give them? Ideas.
Not up, and I wasn't paid for this. I would say hire a manager. Monty Evans does well. Then that way, you don't have
She
to
wasn't
worry
paid
about.
for that. She wasn't paid.
I said I wasn't paid. This is not a paid. I'm not a paid actor, but having for joint session, having you coordinate and do all the setup and just send you the information and you made sure it was there. That was one less thing that we had to worry about doing joint session. And separate session, I kind of ran it and my Zoom kind of froze up. But I think if I would have had someone else running it, um, it would have still been going and I could have just kept back in. But I think having a coordinator run the session, haven't, and then you just host it, which is I think would be so much better. That because that's one less thing you have to worry about.
Okay.
So I think having a coordinator helped with this a lot.
Okay. Grand Joint Council Executive Director.
The Grand Master and Grand Matron, as we all know, are the coordinators really of the Grand Chapter and the Grand Lodge. They're the leaders of the state. From a joint standpoint, I would say the biggest thing I would tell the Grand Joint Council directors is to just make sure that you are, just there communicating consistently, asking where you can help, just being transparent on, where you need to be and again, asking what are you expecting from your supreme leader as well as your grand matron and your grand master, because you kick off the meeting. So you would not want to come online and you're kind of like, okay, what's next or what do we do? And it was definitely a learning curve for us and a learning curve for me as well. So I would say from a Grand Joint Council standpoint, just make sure that you're communicating. Our Supreme Joint Council Affairs Director, he's always telling us, make sure you work with your Grand Master and your Grand Matron. If nothing else, that is so important right now because we're on a virtual level and we're not physically seeing each other and you can't really have that dialogue face to face on what you're expecting. So we all should hold accountability to making sure that we reach out to one another. Even you just can't assume. You got to make sure that you're connecting and making sure you say, okay, what is it that I'm doing? What is it that you need from me? And just staying, just being consistent, and just making sure that you're following through and helping the Grand Master and Grand Matron in any area that they need.
Okay. So Sister Nichols, Carolyn Nichols says, typically the written reports are given to key people and verbal reports are given to the participants. Do the details of the report book need to be in the PowerPoint? Who wants to take that?
So I'll say from my perspective, I agree with her. And
Okay.
And that's the way that it's always been. I mean, like only key people get those detailed reports, which again was one of my challenges with putting it within the on the 25-page deck. So the reports, most of them were all inside the 131-page deck that the leaders received. There were still maybe some modifications made to one of the reports to take off some key information intentionally, I might add, just from the standpoint, it's still electronically. I think looking back on it now, it probably may not be that big of a deal, but I wouldn't want to present it during the actual Zoom meeting. Like Sister Nichols said, I mean, like typically that information is verbally communicated during the actual meetings. However, at any given point, I think technically people have the right to see the reports if they request it. But we typically don't share it with everybody. I mean, like, it's just a lot of personal information out there that we just don't want to be floating around the internet world, right?
So you said it best, Brother Brown, is just getting the expectation of what our supreme leaders want to see. And I think that will minimize exactly what that deck should look like. So I think, again, pre-planning ahead of time will give us an opportunity to do that. And that's what we would definitely want the next group to do. Be real transparent and specific. What do you want to see in that deck? And then that way you can flash to it with, really quick instead of fumbling through. So I would say that was a hiccup for us.
And I would say necessarily you don't probably have to put the reports in the deck. If they're looking for the verbal report, you can actually say it verbally if the supreme leaders and the appropriate leaders and even some department heads have the actual hard copy of the report. You don't necessarily have to put the report in the deck. You can still go through and verbally read the report out, giving out, if they're asking for financial information or credentials reports, you can still do that verbally without actually having it in the deck.
Mhm.
So there's, you have to, this is virtual. So this is your session. So, and you work with your leaders to find out what they want to see. And as our Supreme Grand Matron said, this is a public meeting. The joint session is public. So someone can come in the meeting, you can invite, because this is our turn. This is how we also gain new members. Someone that wants to join when they're coming to our joint session. So there's nothing to say that you have to present it in the deck. So you can speak it, the report.
So I see that I think Sister Nichols answered this for Sister Bell. The question was, is it possible to put the workbooks in a PDF format that we as the members can then download ourselves? Because I think Charlotte Nichols is answering the report book question, but Yolanda Bell still has that question out there. Is that what you're interpreting, Brother Brown? Since I know you're watching this with me.
Yeah, so I think they were talking about two different books. I think one of them initially was talking about the actual the report book, and then Sister Bell was talking about the actual workbook. So I'm not sure how Sister Grand Matron Debbie Dick does her report book, whether it's her workbook, whether it was
digital or
printed.
This year with the workbook, no, I didn't do it electronically for members to download. I actually, based on the situation, we didn't know whether we were going to have it physically or not. So my workbooks were pre-printed. Okay. So basically, I $15 if the member wants the workbook, I'm mailing it out to them. So it was not available for them to download.
Okay. Okay. So you did print workbooks. And yes, for $15, you'll send it to them.
Yes, I'm mailing them out to the members now. Yep.
Okay. So now, how do you deal with the whole proprietary issue of once you're on camera, once you say it, you can't unsay it, right? The whole video perspective, virtual perspective. Lamont, I know you were talking about a Grandmaster, you were talking about it being on the internet. What are you all thoughts around that?
Me personally, my thought process behind it is don't say anything that you can't stand behind.
Okay.
That's my personal thought behind it. And I know we've talked about disclaimers, like creating disclaimers for it after the fact of saying that this is the property of Ralph Bunch Grand Lodge and Eda Sampson Grand Chapter. It's not to be copied or reproduced for any purposes without our written consent and things like that. I mean, like, I think it depends on how it's being used. So if it's being used within international as a training video for other grand sessions, then we're all for it. But at the same time, I think we still have to be conscious of our information. And again, if you can't stand behind it, don't say it. I mean, like, if you're worried about what's something that you said is going to be repeated to somebody else from someone watching the video later, then you probably shouldn't have said it. So I take pride in being able to stand behind my words. I'm not going to get out here and start talking reckless if it's not something that I can say, yeah, I said that. So it is what it is at the end of the day, from my perspective.
Sister Dixon.
Totally agree. We have to realize we are representatives, and some might say, well, I'm not a leader and this and that, and it's my Facebook page, or I can say what I want, I'm expressing myself. But we have to realize we are examples to everyone, our members, our children, and even future members. So we have to remember what we say and what we do. And this is on the internet, and we have to be careful how we represent ourselves. And we want to make sure we represent ourselves in the way that we should, as Christians, for one, and as two, as members of this organization. So we have to know that when someone sees this, it might be a training material. So 5, 10 years later, you want someone to say, wow, they were really excellent. Look how they really represented the organization, instead of like, wow, they really acted that way back then. So we have to realize, how do you want to be seen 5 or 10 years from now? And this is an archive. So we have to realize that.
Sister Dixon.
Yeah, I concur. I would, old saying is that if you have to think about what you're going to say or do, or if you have to question it, then you might want to rethink it before you actually do it. Or say it. So I think it is, there's a lot of etiquette out there for Facebook. I know we've done a few classes on it. Monty, I think you've even done something on it when it came to Facebook etiquette and other things when it comes to social media. So I think as a representative of this organization, whether you're a leader or not, as the Grand Matron and Grandmaster said, we still represent the organization, and being part of the organization is being a leader, is being of something that's great, and we want to represent from across the board. I mean, when it comes to other jurisdictions, other sororities, fraternities, we want to represent and make sure that we stay, wholesome, and that we represent something of Christian's disposition, period. It shouldn't be a question around it. And again, if you have to ask yourself whether or not, if my grandmother see this, what would she think? Then you probably don't want to say it. You probably don't want to do it. So.
Okay.
So, yeah. And ultimately, we just got to protect the brand, right? I mean, like international for us, I mean, like we're representatives of it. So we have to protect our brand. So we have to make sure that we are upright. We are doing things the right way. So I think as long as we do that, then we shouldn't have to really worry about it that much. Right.
So thank you, Sister Dixon, for that. And shameless plug is that this Thursday, I'll be doing top 10 tips for Zoom meeting for the members to really, I see that this is the main platform that our members use. Is not the only one, but this being the main one, I wanted to really zoom in and do a laser focused top 10 lessons about Zoom that you want to know, especially when it comes to lighting and, a background and, face being fully on the screen and all of that good stuff.
Eating.
The mute button. Do you have the mute button there as your number one tip?
Right. Keep
stop
that
video,
handy.
like, mute and stop video. At any moment you can stop video, because this dog, there was a annoying dog that was barking in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, somebody said turn it off. I'm like, I can't turn that person's mic off right now, because yeah.
All right. So it was my dog. All right.
somebody.
Let me rephrase that. That was my daughter's dog.
Okay.
Blame it on the baby. Blame it on the baby.
Mute his mic. No, you can't mute the Grandmaster's mic. At any moment he can speak. So I was like, no, not going to happen. We can pray the dog away, but we can't mute the Grandmaster's mic. So someone asked if the book workbook is electronically done, how would you charge for the books, or even would you charge for the books if it was electronically done?
That's if it was electronically done, that's hard to say. But if I did do it electronically, I would just ask members to make sure they keep it and not forward it to other organizations or place it out on the internet or publicly see. And that's the one thing about when we're doing things electronically and handing out our information, and we have to just be careful they're not posting it someplace else that it should be posted. And that's the one thing about when you're sending something electronically, you want to trust your members to do what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to use it. I probably wouldn't charge if I did it electronically, or maybe a minimum $5 or so, because you have to realize this is our learning tool, and going virtually. And I can't say about the Grandmaster budget and his bank account; he might not need it, but you're losing a revenue. It's a revenue loss, by not having the physical meeting, because we don't have the registration cost or any of that. So this helps offset some of the revenue that we weren't bringing in also. So it would be a minimal charge for the workbook electronically, I would say.
I look at the workbook as, if people have assembled it, I look at it like an ebook. Like you go online and buy an ebook. If
Right.
you really want the information out of that ebook, I was like, okay. Yeah,
there are programs for that, isn't it? There's a program to set up an ebook, right? For purchase.
Yeah, you can, but you just want to make sure they're using it appropriately. And, sometimes, because I found for my certification classes, there's a lot of things that's ebook that's not supposed to be out there that I was able to download for free. So,
and the interesting thing is, even our ritual, anything we have in print, somebody can simply scan in and share it electronically. We don't stop people from sharing it with less than pure intentions when we only put it in print. We just add another layer for them to have to work through. So that's the mindset I think about when I think about our materials electronically, is we can't stop anybody if they're going to, like when Obama was running for president, they asked them something about people who were gaming for food stamps. How are you going to stop the people who shouldn't get food stamps from getting food stamps? He said, you don't build a system for those who are gaming it. You build systems because the majority of the people are doing good.
Well, I agree with that. But also and when you provide, we just have to do multiple formats, because we have to realize there are a lot of members that doesn't have access to internet or might not be able to download the files. We want to be able to offer them alternatives. So we just want to make sure we have all members covered when we think, let's just go electronically. You might be missing out half your sector.
I believe in both and. Now, I was asked to explain the difference between a workbook and a report book. And so for those who are a little bit confused on it, a report book, generally when a grand session is held, the Grand Master and the Grand Matron compile reports from all of the department heads and put it together in a folder or binder or a book, literally, and they give it to the Supreme Grand Master and the Supreme Grand Matron when they show up for the convention.
And they're the only ones that get it.
They're the only ones that get it, which is why when you heard the 130 page number, we're only talking about 2 individuals getting a book that thick if it was in print.
Well, I'm going to say for the state of Michigan, I'm trying to get a book out right now. We normally provide the book for all leaders that's on the dais. So anyone that's on the dais, and this was something like I don't know if you can see.
Going in and out.
Last year.
Going in and out, but okay.
It's a report book. So we provide it to all leaders that's there, supreme leaders, national district leaders. So normally, physically, I would make 15 copies of the workbook, but it's still comprised of
report book.
All reports, Grandmaster reports, Grand Matron reports, Grand Joint Council reports, and that includes annual reports, credentials report, finance reports, bank statements, contracts, your hotel contracts, and then time and place reports. So all reports that they would ask you for.
Okay, and you say about 15 copies you would make?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a report book for the person who needs clarity on it. A workbook, the Grand Master and his education team or coordinators, the Grand Matron and her education team and coordinators will put together a workbook for the specific Grand Lodge or Grand Chapter. And the pages there there's no minimum or maximum on that. Okay, so I wanted to explain that. Now, Did everyone say their recommendations for planners? Did everyone get a chance to?
Planners.
Yeah, for the next Grand Master, Grand Matron, and Grand Joint Council Executive Director, as they're planning their virtual sessions, did everyone get a chance to share your recommendations to them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We did it.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and illustrious DeWitt McGowan, for the sake of needing to type something, said the national leaders, the national leaders get it too. But certainly, since they are leaders, right up under the Supreme, I imagine they would get it also. But
Yes.
thank you, illustrious DeWitt McGowan, timing in to remind us of that great lesson. Okay. The Q&A. So how, I know Sister Dixon, you talked about at the end with Q&A, but also getting the questions in advance, right? So how would you get that message out? Would you send a message out to the WMs, or how would you ensure that the attendees know to submit your questions in writing, or either Grandmaster, I think you said put it in the chat room, so that those who it's targeted to can see it and be prepared for it?
I would recommend that. I mean, like in a perfect world where you have the timing to get everything prepared, I would recommend getting the agenda out to the members ahead of time and having that spot on the agenda that says Q&A at a particular time, and how to submit their questions ahead of time or during the meeting. So whether it's in the chat room, or whether it's going to one particular person to send all of their questions to one particular person, to have that person facilitate all of the questions, I think would make it a little more efficient than trying to find someone or having someone raise their hand during the Zooming so you can give them access to the mic. I think we just need to try to figure out a way to make it a little more efficient so that we can ensure that we keep it moving. I mean, like the last thing we want to do, I mean, like, and God forbid, no one would probably do it, but have someone get up to ask a question and it take them 15 minutes to ask a question because it's a statement more than a question, or if they want to give a long history. If we have like a facilitator, then maybe we can just expedite that question and get it answered ahead of time, or even, yeah, preferably ahead of time would be ideal. Because again, I mean, like we do want to try to stick to the schedule and the agenda. I mean, like business is business. If there's business on the floor, then we're going to take care of it. But at the same time, we just want to do it as efficient as possible and create a procedure for next time to where we can get those questions at least in the queue ahead of time so that we can approach them and attack them all as efficient as possible.
Okay.
I agree with I think have the members, I'm always a proponent of protocol. So have the members send it to the worthy matrons, and the worthy matrons send it to the district matrons, and they funnel them on up. That way everyone knows the questions that's being asked. So we know ahead of time and we can pass them on to the facilitator. And that way we also know what we need to be addressing in our chapters and districts if we see certain questions coming through. So it's also a way as leaders, we know what we need to be concentrating on also if we're getting the same questions, asked differently. So we need to know we need to concentrate on also when we need to put the the most asked questions up front so that the supreme leaders or the national leaders can address those questions first.
Right.
I think Sister Charlotte Nichols, I think is I am Taz 3003.
Yes.
That her, she says, I'm a hater. I'm not a hater. We just know that the National District Grandmaster and the National District Grand Matron get those report books also, but illustrious DeWitt McGowan had to add that in. It's not hating.
They have a long love-hate relationship.
Okay.
They love each other though.
They love each other. Okay. So your final suggestion, Sister Dixon, on that is what?
It's pretty much, I mean, I like the fact of being able to funnel them up ahead of time, but of course there could be something that's said in the meeting that may trigger a question. So being able to have that chat available, and again, coordinating a host or, using our, our deputy or our associate grand matron to help with that piece as well. or even our Grand Joint Council secretary, to help with that part as well. If there were questions that were done in the chat or ahead of time, because ahead of time helps us prepare. And again, it does shed light on challenges that we may be able to address offline and get our worthy matrons and district matrons involved if they're, or, district masters and worship masters involved if there's a deeper challenge compared to bringing it on this platform.
So Sister Wimberly, here's Sister Wimberly's comment and question. She says, a lot of times members may not have a question until they hear the message. Yeah. How should they present those questions? And I think you all just pretty much laid that out, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Florida,
right. Through the host or the chat, the designated person that we have for accepting the questions, or through the chat process.
Okay. And illustrious DeWitt McGowan commented again. I don't think he's tired of commenting. So he added a comment of, it was a great grand session and it will get better as it moves through the Midwest because we all will work together. Thank you again, illustrious DeWitt McGowan, for that additional comment that you made. I love the Midwest, the mighty Midwest. Okay, so is there anything that I should have covered or should have highlighted that you all feel like I didn't, that you all would like to bring to our viewers' awareness?
Well, were there any questions or that you got ahead of time with promoting this opportunity? I mean, were there burning questions that you received more offline from a tech standpoint that, we could do better, or for the next one?
The way you all laid it out helped to give those who were wondering, how did it go? I think you all answered a lot of the questions that came through. The biggest thing is, of course, coordination. I think the combination of how do you deal with separate sessions, if you're going to attach it to the Grand Joint Council joint virtual session.
Debbie might have to be on a separate call for that one. It was great though. Well, it was great, but
yeah, and for those that familiar with Zoom, they have breakout rooms. So we could have used the breakout room so that way you're not dialing into another session. So we could have left the joint session and then just broke out into another session. But we had already had it set up separately, so we went to another session. But with Zoom, and you're having it a coordinator, another shameless plug, you can use Monty Evans too, and he'll set up a breakout room, which makes it easier. And you would do your same thing. Just make sure you have your agenda and your schedule, and you know exactly what you're going to do in your separate session, which makes it flow, because you want to keep your members interested. Because I think if you go in over 2 to 3 hours, you've lost your members.
Oh,
so
yeah, for sure.
You just want to make sure whatever you're doing, that especially in a separate session, that it keeps your members interested and you have their attention and you're giving them vital information. So
yeah, but again, we have to remember, so we didn't use the standard Zoom for our session. So we upgraded to a different Zoom so that we can have those breakout rooms and have more than 100 people on the call if necessary. And so we pay for a few extras for a webinar standpoint as well. So that's something that you have to take into consideration if you actually need to upgrade to a higher level of Zoom, because I believe the Supreme Grand Chapter and the Supreme Grand Lodge has a Zoom account that Brother Evans has access to, but I don't think it's the premium.
Yeah, they have Zoom meetings. I have
right.
Zoom webinar.
Right. So it's a different platform that we actually used for ours, just to make sure that we did have more control and we could have breakout sessions and things like that. So I think you have to take that into consideration as well, because otherwise your breakout session or your separate sessions would have to be at different times if you didn't have that, right? Because you can only have, in theory, you can only have one meeting going at a time if you don't have that premium, that different account. So I think you got to take those logistic things into consideration and get you a good coordinator, somebody like Brother Evans that knows the ways of making it happen. Because from a logistical standpoint and from a technology standpoint, we didn't have to worry about anything. All we had to do was make sure he had the right files, and we're going back and forth maybe an hour or two before the meeting kickoff just to make sure that he did have the right files. And he was so smart about it. He knew to flip back in between the files without us even having to tell him to do it. So I think if you got a good technology person that knows how it should go as well, it just makes life that much easier for you in the execution. So yeah.
Thank you all for those remarks. I appreciate that. Sister Dixon, I think the only other thing was someone had called and I said I would suggest that if you're going to have multiple Zoom meetings, like let's say the grand chapter, let's say you have a grand joint council session, right? And then you have a separate session, is that you put it in the email, same email. Is that I think you all released 2 emails, one for the grand joint, and then depending on which one came up first in somebody's inbox was the one they dialed into.
Exactly.
And so that was literally, other than what you all have already said and outlined, that would be the only other thing, is that if you're going to use multiple Zoom meeting IDs and passwords, it's put it all in the same email with bold and highlight what time, and if you can highlight it in yellow and all of that. So you can just flip back and forth that way. So then the person has that. I think that's it. So, okay. Well, closing remarks. We're at 9:18 p.m. I believe in trying to get done with everything by 9:30 so we can give the members and you all back the rest of your night. And so closing thoughts or remarks, illustrious Lamont Brown, you want to give us a short remarks?
Thank you. God bless you. Good night. Put my Russell Simmons impersonation on.
Before you go, Brother Brown, Grandmaster James Holt says each session 1 hour max or 2.
Each session. So if we're talking about the joint where we're doing reports and everything, I'll say max of 2. Okay. You don't have to use the entire 2, but you don't want to tell your members it's only going to be an hour and then you're at 1 hour and 20 minutes and it feels like you're rushing. I would rather feel like I have time to take care of the business and have some time to spare at the end versus not having enough time. I think if you plan it out, try to put together a realistic time frame based upon how long you think it's going to take to go through the reports, and keep it under 2 hours. It should never go over 2. Okay. But I don't think 1 hour is efficient, because you're not going to start right at the start time anyway. I mean, like, you're going to have people trying to dial in, and you're going to have technical difficulty from some people trying to log in, or they logged into the wrong meeting, or frozen. All of that in the beginning, or it's, so you're going to lose 10 minutes on the front end anyway. So that's my recommendation.
Okay. Now, what about
and you got to get my girl name right.
Charlotte Nichols. Am I saying
Charlotte
right?
Nichols? No, not Charlotte. Carlin.
No, that was Charlotte, I think, asking the questions. Or was it Carlin?
Carlin. Yeah. It's Carlin. What was I saying? Caroline?
I don't know what you was calling her, but it's Carlin Nichols.
Carlin. Car and then Lynn. Carlin.
Car and Lynn. Okay. It's a Carlin. I don't want to have to do no. Okay. So Carlin Nichols just asked the question. She says, Michigan Conclave is potentially 3 back-to-back meetings for sisters. Do you recommend 1 Zoom and breakouts, or sign out, breaks, and sign back in?
1 Zoom with breakouts, but give them a 5-10 minute intermission in between, so they'll have a little freedom time. So I would recommend breakouts, but with 5-10 minute intermissions in between.
And Sister Yolanda Bell asks, I'm glad the questions are coming through, what do you all feel was the best part of this experience? It's a good question.
It's a good question.
For
getting it done.
Not having to drag. For me, it was not having to drag all the stuff up to the hotel, make sure We have everything running around just to make sure everything was set up with the hotel, and the members all have their rooms and everything.
It's all
It's
that goes
sit
with
down,
Installation,
you
dish. Yeah.
just go to work, and guess what? It's over. It's done. You can
it. You
breathe.
can turn the computer off.
Okay.
Yep.
Sister Dixon, what would you say is the best part?
I would have to ditto that a little bit as well, because we're all just on, heightened on just trying to get done and plan. And it's a lot of planning that goes into this, especially, from, the Grand Lodge and the Grand Chapter separate level.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good experience. I think the best part of it was we got to learn something new.
Okay.
And hopefully be able to outline the platform for us to be able to do this in the near future, not all the time, hopefully, but we do miss each other and want to get back to each other. But I think the best experience was learning it and having this opportunity to iron out the kinks in it.
Okay. Grandmaster.
Yeah, and I agree with both my Grand Matron and Grand Joint Council Director. But for me, the best part about it really was bringing everybody back together. So, I mean, like we were together 3 months ago for our quarterly, and then everything just got crazy after that. So it's been a long time since we've all been together on the call. So, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't really fond about doing it to start with. But once we got on and you're seeing all of the names of everybody and you're communicating back and forth, you got all your supreme leaders and everybody on there, it actually turned out to be a lot of fun. So for me, it was just bringing everybody back together and being able to fellowship with everybody on Zoom, because we haven't had many joint meetings where with everybody on. I mean, like I've had meetings with the brothers. I'm sure the Grand Matron has had meetings with the sisters, but to bring everybody together with the national leaders and the supreme leaders all on at the same time, and it was just like we were all together, even though we weren't together. I was sitting in the house with my shirt, tie, jacket, and my basketball shorts on. So, I mean, I was comfortable, right? But it still felt like we were all together, hanging out like we do when we are together. So,
Oh
yeah,
boy.
felt good.
Your closing remarks. You can take as long as you need to, Grandmaster.
No, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to share our experience with the other members of the order, so they'll know exactly the gotchas and what they're able to do, and that we're here as a resource for them. So any questions, we're here to help them as much as we can, since we were able to go through this. And it was a great learning experience, and I'm glad we were able to meet and speak on it and let everyone know that it is a good opportunity. So if you haven't done it, and if you're one of those states that know you can't meet in person, I would say technology is your friend. Don't back away from it. Don't shy away from it. Just try it, and we're here to help if you need help.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sister Dixon.
I think this is a great platform for those smaller jurisdictions and states that have had challenges even before the pandemic with meeting and getting together. So I think this definitely is the playing field, or this is the playbook, hopefully, for getting those states and smaller jurisdictions together more often than they would, than they haven't been able to. So I think this is definitely a learning experience. I'm grateful to the Grandmaster and Grand Matron for just keeping us all involved in this process. And from a Grand Joint Council standpoint, again, just making sure that you make sure that you're connecting with your Grand Matron and Grand Master, just pretty much doing what you already do to the Joint Council directors. But, just put your own spin on it, have fun with it, be you, whatever it is you normally do, just have fun with it. That would be my biggest advice, because we want to make sure that they're involved, they're comfortable, they're happy, they're engaged, and we got to come up with ways to do that. So I'm open to those Joint Council directors. If you got any ideas, share. We can get on the call and share. And then that way we can be ready when it's time to help our states with doing our joint meetings.
So 2 comments came through, or questions. One is from Hope Shelley Ann, says, so reaching out to any one of you for assistance to set up is an option. I think she put a smiley face and that was a question mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
And you're going to get the voicemail. But but the second question.
Well, on Facebook, I'm Buchanan. I never changed it to Dixon. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna say, do not contact me via Facebook because I probably won't respond back.
Okay. Okay.
Ditto.
These are the only time I'm on Facebook is when I'm listening in on these Zoom meetings. So
Okay. And then the second question is from Sister Bridget Washington. Her question is, how do you handle brothers and sisters that want to visit your grand session? I imagine she means virtually.
Send them
we
the
actually
link.
had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Send them the link.
Send them the link. Yep.
Okay. Let's send them the
We
link.
had quite a few that were in our virtual, that were in our joint, that were from out of state. We had quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know at least in the Midwest, our National Midwest District Grandmaster, I think, shared the link with some of the Grandmasters in the Midwest. So I had a few people reach out to me. Grandmasters asked me, could they send the link out to their brothers? And absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's international. I mean, like, they'd have came to the grand session if we had had it in person. So yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what I did. I sent it out to sisters. I'm gonna give her a shameless plug. I hope she's listening. Donna Fields from New Jersey sent her the link to the joint session
Dressed
and
up for your separate
She
session,
sure
right?
did. For the joint session, she was.
Yeah,
so I
she
sent the
posted,
joint and she attended the separate session. So yeah, it's open to anyone, that allows the members to get to see and to travel and to visit you virtually. Some might have never been able to make it physically. So this is your way of inviting them. So just send them the link. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I want to thank you all for taking the time tonight to give your thoughts and ideas and feedback on your grand session. I want to congratulate you again on a successful first virtual session for the whole order. So the Michigan Project is what is affectionately termed. And with that being said, may God bless International Free and Accepted Modern Masons Incorporated and Order Eastern Star. May he also bless illustrious James O. Dogan, our Supreme President, and our First Lady, Sister Minnie Dogan, all Supreme Leaders, National District Leaders, Grand Leaders, and local leaders, and more importantly, our members. With that being said, thank you all again for attending, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.